When people think of friendly fire, they often picture chaotic land battles or misidentified aircraft. Less attention is paid to the dangers lurking beneath the waves, where submarines hunt in isolation and operate under intense secrecy. With poor visibility and radio silence, submariners must identify friend or foe by silhouette, sound, and coded signals, and a single mistake can be catastrophic. The attached research highlighted several cases where submarines were sunk not by enemy action, but by their own side or their own torpedoes. On the 10th of September 1939, the Royal Navy submarine HMS Triton sank the British submarine HMS Oxley after its challenge signals went unanswered. 5 years later, the American USS Tang, one of the most successful submarines of World War II, fired a defective torpedo that circled back and sank her. In 1944, the American USS Tullibee suffered a similar fate when a Mark 14 torpedo apparently made a circular run and exploded, leaving only one survivor. During the Cold War, a Soviet nuclear submarine collided with the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk, miraculously causing no deaths. Each incident provides a lens into the human, technological, and procedural factors behind submarine-friendly fire, and highlights the importance of robust identification and safe operating practices. In the opening days of World War II, Britain deployed submarines to prevent German U-boats from breaking into the Atlantic. HMS Oxley, originally built for the Royal Australian Navy and later transferred to the Royal Navy, was among the boats sent on patrol off Norway. On the night of the 10th of September 1939, the British submarine HMS Triton was patrolling its sector when it spotted another submarine. The encounter, according to the official testimony of Lieutenant Commander H.P. D.C. Steele, Triton's captain, he surfaced at around 1955 and set a patrol course before handing over the watch. Shortly before 2100, the officer of the watch reported a submarine on the port bow. Steele ordered his signalman to prepare the bow torpedo tubes and challenged the unknown boat 3 times using standard recognition signals. When no reply came, he fired a small grenade flare. Again, there was no response. Convinced he had encountered a German U-boat, Steele ordered the firing of 2 torpedoes. 1 torpedo hit the target. Moments later, Triton's crew heard cries for help and quickly realized the terrible mistake they had made. They rescued Lieutenant Commander Harold Bowerman and able seaman Herbert Glucks, but 53 other Oxley sailors perished. Secrecy and inquiry. At the time, the British Admiralty kept the cause of Oxley's loss secret. Families were told that the submarine had been accidentally rammed, and wartime propaganda suppressed the friendly fire nature of the tragedy. It was not until the 1950s that the public learned the truth. A board of inquiry convened on the 23rd of September 1939 heard testimony from Triton and Oxley personnel. The inquiry concluded that Steele had followed procedure and was blameless. Oxley had strayed into Triton's patrol area and failed to respond to challenges. Factors cited included strong currents, navigation errors, and communications difficulties. The secrecy shrouding the event illustrated how wartime governments often hid friendly fire tragedies to protect morale. The Triton-Oxley incident illustrates the dangers of submarine identification. Submarines cannot always use radio because broadcasts reveal their positions. During wartime, boats followed rigid challenge and reply procedures. On spotting a silhouette, they would flash coded signals or fire flares called grenades and expect a prescribed reply before approaching. In the 1939 case, Oxley's crew apparently attempted to reply, but either their signalman hesitated or their grenade misfired. By the time Captain Bowerman reached the bridge, Triton's torpedo was already on the way. Modern navies employ emergency identification signals to reduce such risks. The U.S. Navy's system uses smoke floats and flares ejected from a submarine to indicate intentions. The color of the signal conveys meaning. A green smoke or flare denotes a training torpedo launch.
Yellow means the submarine is about to rise to periscope depth and surface ships should cease anti-submarine attacks. Red signals an emergency and that the submarine will surface immediately, and 2 white flares indicate a routine surfacing. These signals are intended to prevent misunderstanding during exercises or emergency.
However, they depend on observers seeing and interpreting them correctly. The challenge and reply system can still fail. Visibility may be poor, signal equipment may malfunction, or crews may hesitate. Triton's officers waited about a minute after the challenges, counting slowly before firing. But that was not enough for Oxley's crew to respond. The incident underscores how communications breakdowns, compounded by secrecy and the stress of wartime operations, can lead to deadly misidentification. An elite hunter. The USS Tang SS-306 was a Balau-class submarine that entered service in October 1943 under Lieutenant Commander Richard O'Kane. In 5 war patrols, it sank an officially recognized total of 24 Japanese ships, one of the highest tallies in the Pacific War. Tang's daring included rescuing 22 downed U.S. aviators from Truk Lagoon and surviving fierce counterattacks. By the autumn of 1944, the submarine had become a symbol of American undersea prowess. Yet, its final patrol revealed how technical defects could undo even the most capable crew. The final attack, on the 24th of October 1944, during Tang's 5th patrol in the Formosa, Taiwan Strait, O'Kane engaged a Japanese convoy. Having already sunk multiple ships, Tang fired its final 2 torpedoes at a lone transport from a range of about 900 yards. The first torpedo ran true, but the second malfunctioned. According to survivor Clayton Oliver Decker, the torpedo came up dancing out of the water and, after re-entering, had a hard left rudder. It circled around the port side and slammed into Tang just forward of the after torpedo room. Within seconds, the explosion blew open the aft compartments and the submarine began to flood. Survival and aftermath. O'Kane and some crew members on the bridge were thrown into the water by the blast. Those inside scrambled into the forward torpedo room and attempted to escape through the escape trunk while Japanese ships dropped depth charges. Of the 87 men aboard, only 13 managed to escape. 8 reached the surface and 5 survived. 4 more men who had been on the bridge survived by clinging to wreckage. The remaining 78 crew members perished. O'Kane and other survivors were captured and spent the rest of the war as prisoners. In recognition of his gallantry, O'Kane received the Medal of Honor after the war. Tang herself had fired 24 torpedoes on that patrol. 22 hit enemy ships, 1 missed, and the last sank her. The tragedy exposed the deadly consequences of defective torpedo design. The Tang disaster was not simply bad luck. It stemmed from inherent problems with World War II torpedoes. Early torpedoes were straight-running, like bullets. But by the early 20th century, they were fitted with gyroscopes that allowed them to turn after launch and then straighten towards their target. The gyro angle could be set mechanically in the tube. After firing, the torpedo would travel on a straight reach before the gyro steering engaged to turn it toward the target. However, if the gyro malfunctioned or linkages failed, the torpedo might keep turning and describe a full circle. This phenomenon, known as a circular run, meant the weapon could return to its launch point. American submariners in World War II were plagued by defective torpedoes. The standard Mark 14 torpedo suffered from 4 major problems. It ran deeper than set. Its magnetic exploder caused premature detonations. Its contact exploder often failed to detonate, and it occasionally made circular runs. Wartime secrecy and bureaucratic inertia delayed corrective action. The weapons were expensive and limited testing occurred.
An analysis of U.S. torpedo firings indicates there were about 30 documented cases of circular running torpedoes. 2 torpedoes, one electric Mark 18 in Tang and one Mark 14 in Tullibee, struck and sank the submarines that launched them.
In total, these circular runs represented only about 0.9% of the 3,200 torpedoes fired by U.S. submarines, but the catastrophic potential was obvious. Faulty gyroscopes and defective linkage mechanisms are believed to have caused these runs. The Mark 14's designers attempted to mitigate the risk by adding anti-circular run devices that stopped the torpedo if it turned beyond a set angle, but in combat the measures were unreliable. Torpedo maintenance was difficult aboard submarines at sea, and war patrols demanded heavy use of the limited inventory. In the Tang case, some historians suggest the problem lay with the electric Mark 18 torpedo, which used a different guidance system but could still suffer gyro failures. Regardless of model, the tragedies forced the U.S. Navy to reassess torpedo design and invest in thorough testing and quality control. A lone survivor's account. The USS Tullibee, SS-284, began her 4th war patrol in March 1944. She was assigned to patrol north of Palau during the U.S. carrier strikes on the islands. According to the account of the sole survivor, gunner's mate C.W., Oxley Tullibee made radar contact with a Japanese convoy on the night of the 26th of March. The submarine attempted to attack, but squally weather prevented a clear visual. After enduring several depth charges from the escorts, Tullibee closed to 3,000 yards and fired 2 torpedoes. A minute later, a massive explosion rocked the boat. Oxley, who was on the bridge, was blown into the water. He later reported that the blast could not have been from an enemy depth charge, because he knew the range and bearing of the escorts. He concluded that one of Tullibee's own torpedoes made a circular run. Oxley floated alone, hearing shouts fade in the darkness. 10 hours later, a Japanese escort vessel found him. After machine gunning him, the crew pulled him aboard. He spent over a year as a prisoner, later recounting his ordeal and confirming that he never saw another survivor. U.S. naval records credit Tullibee with 3 ships sunk in her short career, totaling 15,500 tons, but her end was caused by her own weapon. The Tullibee tragedy emphasized that even disciplined crews could fall victim to defective torpedoes. Other cases. While Tang and Tullibee are the 2 best-known examples of submarines sinking themselves, there were non-fatal circular runs that nearly did the same. Several American submarines reported torpedoes turning back. In some cases, alert lookouts saw the oncoming wake in time to take evasive action. The Mark 14 case study notes that 22 out of the 30 circular run incidents involved Mark 14 torpedoes, but most did not result in a hit because the submarine was able to dive or maneuver away. Nevertheless, the possibility of self-destruction weighed heavily on submarine crews and contributed to stress on patrol, shadowing the carrier. Friendly fire incidents are not confined to World War II. During the Cold War, submarines from rival superpowers stalked surface ships to gather intelligence. In March 1984, the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk CV-63, with 85 aircraft and a battle group of 8 escorts, took part in the Team Spirit 8-4 exercise in the Sea of Japan. The Soviet Pacific Fleet dispatched the nuclear-powered K-314 Petropavlovsk, a Victor-class attack submarine, to shadow the carrier. For several days, the 2 forces played cat and mouse. On the 20th of March, bad weather caused K-314 to lose contact. When Captain Vladimir Evchenko raised the periscope from 10 meters depth, he discovered the entire carrier group only 4-5 kilometers away. The collision
Evsinko ordered the submarine to dive, but it was too late. At 22:05, K-314 surfaced directly in front of Kitty Hawk's bow. The carrier, traveling at 15 knots with navigation lights on, could not avoid the collision. According to U.S. accounts, the Soviet boat displayed no navigation lights and failed to perform a sonar sweep before surfacing. Kitty Hawk skipper Captain David Rogers felt a noticeable shudder as the Submarine scraped along the hull. The carrier's helicopters inspected the Soviet submarine and reported that it appeared seaworthy. However, K-314's propeller was badly damaged, and the carrier had a large hole in its bow, causing thousands of tons of jet fuel to leak. By sheer luck, neither the nuclear reactors nor weapons aboard the ships were breached. Aftermath. Kitty Hawk was escorted to Subic Bay for repairs, while K-314 was towed to a Soviet base. Both navies blamed the Soviet captain. Rear Admiral James Watkins of the U.S. Navy stated that the Soviets had placed themselves in a hazardous position and failed to keep clear. Soviet authorities suspended Captain Evsinko from command. The incident ended team spirit 8-4 and highlighted the risks of submarine surveillance missions. It also served as a reminder that collisions and near misses between nuclear-armed vessels could have devastating environmental and geopolitical consequences. Across these cases, several common factors emerge. Poor communication and identification protocols were central to the Triton-Oxley tragedy. The challenge signals either failed or were not seen, and wartime secrecy prevented the submarines from freely broadcasting their positions. The emergency identification flare system used by the U.S. Navy demonstrates how navies attempted to codify communication, yet such systems rely on clear visibility and recognition. In addition, the stress and fatigue of long patrols can lead to mistakes. Captain Bowerman miscalculated his position because he underestimated the strength of the current and relied on outdated bearings. When he surfaced to get his bearings, he warned his officer of the possibility of sighting friendly submarines, but then left the bridge, missing the critical moment. Human error and the fog of war thus combined to place Oxley directly in Triton's line of fire. Faulty technology also played a major role. The U.S. Navy's defective torpedoes created an invisible threat to the submarines themselves. The Mach 14 circular runs were caused by unreliable gyros and linkage mechanisms. Commanders often did not know about the problem because of secretive policies and limited testing. In Tang's case, the torpedo apparently surfaced and turned due to a defective rudder. For K-314, the issue was not a torpedo, but a failure to properly use sonar. U.S. submariner David Hornbuckle noted that the Soviet crew apparently did not perform an active sonar sweep, and thus failed to detect the 82,000-ton carrier bearing down on them. Sound at a submarine's stern can mask other noises, leaving a blind spot that must be managed with proper procedures. Organizational culture influenced decisions. Wartime propaganda encouraged secrecy, and sometimes led navies to conceal the true causes of accidents. The Soviet Navy emphasized boldness in shadowing U.S. carriers. Hornbuckle speculated that a Soviet captain might have surfaced deliberately near the carrier to demonstrate prowess. U.S. submarine commanders like O'Kane were under pressure to sink ships. They fired torpedoes quickly and at close range, sometimes leaving little time to react to a malfunction. These cultural factors, combined with technology and human limitations, help explain how friendly fire incidents occurred. Each tragedy prompted efforts to improve safety and identification. The Triton-Oxley incident led the Royal Navy to refine its patrol sector assignments and recognition procedures. The Board of Inquiry emphasized that commanders must know their sectors precisely and must promptly answer challenges.
Over time, the Royal Navy improved training in recognition signals and navigation, though full acknowledgement of the friendly fire did not come until decades later. The secrecy surrounding the incident eventually gave way to a more transparent approach, recognizing that frank analysis of mistakes helps prevent recurrence. In the United States, the torpedo scandal triggered major reforms. Admiral Charles Lockwood authorized unauthorized testing that exposed defects in the Mark 14 torpedo, leading to redesigns of the exploder and improvements in gyro reliability. The adoption of the electric Mark 18 torpedo reduced reliance on the problematic magnetic exploder, though the Tang disaster showed that new models were not immune to failure. Post-war analyses emphasized the need for rigorous testing, quality control, and feedback from frontline crews. The U.S. Navy also formalized the emergency identification flare system described earlier, ensuring that both submarines and surface ships understood the meaning of green, yellow, red, and white signals. The Cold War collision led to procedural adjustments. Submarines were reminded to perform sonar sweeps and maintain safe distance when surfacing near shipping lanes. International maritime law was reiterated. A submarine must display navigation lights and give way when surfacing. In later years, US, and Russian navies established incidents at sea agreements to reduce the risk of collisions and miscalculations. The incident also influenced public debate about the dangers of nuclear-armed vessels operating in close proximity and underscored the need for robust communication channels between rivals. Friendly fire incidents involving submarines are rare but devastating. The stories of Oxley, Tullibee, and K314 show how a combination of faulty equipment, poor communication, human error, and organizational pressures can lead to tragedy. In each case, men died not at the hands of the enemy but because of mistakes or design flaws within their own forces. These incidents spurred reforms, better identification signals, improved torpedoes, rigorous testing, refined sonar procedures, and international agreements. They also highlight the importance of transparency. Hiding errors may protect morale in the short term, but hinders learning. For today's navies, the lessons remain relevant. Submarines still operate in secrecy, and modern weapon systems are complex. Maintaining clear communication protocols, investing in reliable technology, and fostering a culture that encourages reporting and addressing defects are essential to prevent friendly fire tragedies. As we remember the sailors lost aboard Oxley, Tang, and Tullibee, and acknowledge the narrow escape of K314 and Kitty Hawk, we recognize that vigilance and continuous improvement are the best safeguards against repeating history.